Right now, somewhere in your body, there is a fear with no story behind it. You feel it. A flash of dread in a crowded elevator. A tightening in your chest at the sight of a spider crossing the floor. A jolt awake at 3 in the morning for no reason you can name. You search your memory for where it started. There's nothing there. No accident. No trauma. No single afternoon you can point to and say, that is where this began. But the real answer is far stranger than memory. That fear might not be yours. It might belong to someone who died before you were born. For most of your life, you've probably assumed fear works the way memory works. Something happens to you. Your brain files it away. The fear follows the event, like a shadow follows a body. That's the story most people believe. For a long time, scientists believed it too. Then, in 2013, a study out of Emory University quietly took that story apart. Neuroscientists Brian Diaz and Carrie Ressler trained mice to fear the smell of cherry blossoms. Every time the mice smelled it, they received a small shock. Within days, the scent alone was enough to make them freeze. That part isn't surprising. Animals learn to fear things that hurt them. That's basic conditioning. The kind any psychology student could explain on the first day of class. What happened next is the part that broke the field open. Those mice had pups. The pups had never smelled cherry blossoms. They had never been shocked. They had never been anywhere near the original experiment. And yet, the moment researchers introduced that same scent, the pups flinched. Their brains showed measurable physical changes in the exact neural pathway tied to detecting that smell. A fear response, present from birth, for an experience they never had. Not a story told. Not a behavior copied. Something built directly into the architecture of a nervous system that had never once been threatened. How does a body inherit a memory it never made? The answer lives in a field called epigenetics, and here is the plain English version of it. Your DNA is not just a string of instructions. It's a string of instructions with switches attached. Life experience can flip those switches on or off without changing the instructions themselves, and in certain extreme cases, those switches can be passed down to the next generation, and sometimes the one after that. Not the memory. Not the event. Just the setting. Just the readiness to react before the reason ever arrives. Your ancestors lived through things you will likely never have to live through. Famine that lasted years. Predators waiting in the dark beyond the firelight. Violence that arrived without warning and without mercy. Their bodies didn't just survive those moments. In some cases, their bodies adjusted the dial for the children who came after them, long before anyone understood what a gene even was. That dial may still be set in you. This is where the story gets personal, and where it gets harder to dismiss as just mice in a lab. In the early 2000s, psychiatrist Rachel Yehuda began studying children of Holocaust survivors. Not the survivors themselves. Their children. People who were born decades after the camps were liberated, who had never experienced that horror firsthand, who grew up in safe homes in ordinary cities. What she found was unsettling. These children showed altered levels of cortisol, the hormone your body releases under stress. Their stress systems were primed differently than the children of parents who hadn't lived through the same atrocity. Primed toward vigilance. Primed toward a body that expects danger before danger ever arrives at the door. Yehuda's work has been debated and refined for over 2 decades, as good science should be. Some of her early claims have since been narrowed and tested again. But the central finding has held up under more scrutiny than almost any other study of its kind. Extreme stress can leave a biological trace that outlives the person who experienced it. Your grandmother's worst year might still be living in your nervous system. Not as a story she told you at dinner. As a setting she never chose to pass down, and never explained, because she didn't know she was doing it. How could she? Nobody hands you a manual for what your fear is going to carry forward. So why does this matter for the fear you feel today? The one with no story attached to it at all? Because not every inherited fear comes from a single traumatic event in one family's history. Some of it is older than any one family. Some of it is older than language itself. In 1971, psychologist Martin Seligman noticed something strange about human phobias. People develop intense, fast, almost impossible to shake fears of snakes, spiders, heights, and the dark, far more often than they develop phobias of things that are statistically far more dangerous to a person living today, like cars, electrical outlets, or sugar. Seligman called this biological preparedness, the idea that evolution didn't leave fear learning entirely up to chance or up to a single childhood incident. It preloaded certain dangers into the human nervous system before birth. Threats that killed your ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years got a head start in your fear circuitry. Threats invented in the last 100 years did not get that same head start, no matter how deadly they actually are. Your brain isn't bad at calculating modern risk. It's running threat software built for an entirely different world. This is where neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux's research becomes useful. Ledoux mapped what he calls the low road of fear, a shortcut in your brain that runs straight from your senses to your amygdala, the almond-shaped structure that triggers fear before your conscious mind has even finished understanding what it's looking at. That shortcut exists for one reason: speed. If there's a shape in the grass that might be a snake, your ancestors didn't have time to think it through carefully. The ones who froze or fled first, before they consciously recognized the threat, were the ones who survived long enough to pass on their genes. The ones who paused to reason it out calmly sometimes didn't get the chance to finish the thought. You are descended, almost entirely, from the ones who flinched first. So when your heart pounds in an elevator, or your skin crawls at a spider on the wall, or you wake at 3 in the morning with no explanation at all, you are not malfunctioning. You're not broken, and you're not weak. And you're certainly not imagining things. You are running ancient software on a modern operating system, software written by famine, software written by predators in the dark, software written by ancestors who never met you, but who built your nervous system anyway, one surviving generation at a time, choice by choice, flinch by flinch. Look at how this shows up in ordinary life. A parent who survived a war flinching at a slammed door, and a child who grew up safe doing the exact same flinch, with no war to explain it. A person terrified of deep water, who has never come close to drowning. A fear of public speaking that feels less like nerves and more like your body bracing for exile from the group, the kind of exile that, for most of human history, meant death. None of these reactions need a personal origin story to be real. That's the part most people get backwards. They assume if they can't remember the cause, the fear must be irrational, something to be talked out of or pushed past through sheer willpower. But what if the fear was never asking to be remembered? What if it was only ever asking to be recognized? Here's the part most people never consider. If fear can be passed down without an event, then the absence of fear can be just as misleading. Just because you've never been bitten by a snake doesn't mean your caution around one is irrational. And just because you personally survived something terrible doesn't mean the people who come after you are starting from a blank page. Some of what you carry was never yours to begin with. Some of what you'll carry forward was never entirely yours either. It belonged to whoever came before, and it will belong, in some quiet, biological way, to whoever comes after you, whether you ever tell them about it or not. That's not a reason for despair. It's closer to the opposite. It means the fear in your chest right now isn't a flaw in your design. It's evidence of a design that worked. for thousands of generations. Against odds you will never have to fully understand because they already won that fight for you. So the next time fear grips you and you go looking for the reason, and you find nothing, consider the other possibility. Maybe there's nothing to find, because the moment never happened to you at all. Maybe it happened to someone whose name you don't even know, in a year you'll never see, in a body that became, eventually, yours, passed hand to hand, gene to gene, until it landed here, tonight, in you. Right now, somewhere in your body, there is a fear, with no story behind it. And maybe for the first time, you understand exactly where that story actually lives.